All right, let's dive right into this explainer and explore what is frankly a massive, yet totally silent paradigm shift. Right now, large-scale AI assistants are quietly, but completely, changing how we as a society access, synthesize, and validate knowledge. We're moving away from traditional search engines and entering the era of what researchers are calling the algorithmic episteme. Now, that's just a fancy academic way of saying that AI systems are quickly becoming the centralized gatekeepers of what we consider to be true. I want you to pause for just a second and ask yourself, when you ask a conversational AI to explain a complex topic, who is actually curating that authoritative answer you get back? We all tend to just accept these incredibly fluent, confident responses at face value, right? But behind that blinking cursor, there are invisible forces, complex architectures, and strict corporate policies completely filtering reality before it ever reaches your screen.
Section 1. The New Search Reality. Let's map out exactly how massive this paradigm shift is, happening right under our fingertips. So there is a stark, fundamental difference between the old web and the new web. For over 2 decades, traditional search engines gave us a ranked list of diverse hyperlinks. And yeah, sure, the ranking was always biased by SEO, but the downstream cognitive work, the actual reading, comparing, and interpreting of multiple perspectives, well, that was entirely up to you. But now, generative AI assistants collapse all of those discrete activities into a single, unified narrative response. The system evaluates the perspectives, so you don't have to.
Which leads us to a truly shocking number, 0%. Literally, zero. When search engines integrate generative direct answers right at the top of their results, the organic click-through rate for actual real website links drops to near zero. Global search-referred traffic to independent publishers is absolutely collapsing. We are being isolated from the primary sources of data, and instead, we're relying entirely on a platform's synthesized consensus.
And listen, this isn't some sci-fi, distant future scenario. 37% of consumers are already initiating their searches directly through generative tools, bypassing traditional indexes completely. In just a year's time, the ratio of traditional search users to generative search users has narrowed drastically. By choosing convenience, we're transferring immense epistemic authority over to these platforms. We are essentially letting them decide what is relevant.
Section 2. Inside the black box. We're going to peel back the curtain here and look at how a simple prompt is actually processed.
An AI's answer isn't just the raw output of a neural network's brain. Not at all. It is the product of 4 completely hidden technical layers. When you hit enter, the orchestration layer intercepts your prompt and frequently just rewrites it entirely. Then the retrieval layer goes out and grabs semantic matches from databases. Next, the system layer applies rigid corporate policies. And only after navigating this entire maze does your prompt finally reach the model layer for generation. It's really a highly curated assembly line.
So the crucial bottleneck in that assembly line is this thing called the re-ranker. You see, AI models suffer from a lost-in-the-middle phenomenon, meaning they heavily prioritize information placed at the very beginning or the very end of their context window. The re-ranker is a highly influential, entirely undisclosed mechanism that secretly decides which facts get that prime real estate and which facts are pushed to the middle to be effectively ignored.
But wait, before the AI even starts typing back to you, invisible instructions called system prompts are silently prepended to your query. These rules define the AI's persona and its safety boundaries. If what you are asking conflicts with the corporate policy coded into the system layer, these hidden filters will actively override your direct instructions. Basically, the corporate rulebook always wins out.
Section 3. Who decides the truth? Let's examine how these invisible architectural choices actively alter history and factual reality.
Consider this data from a recent audit involving the 1989 Romanian Revolution. Researchers tested how models explain history based purely on the perceived demographic of the user. When prompted as an elite student, the AI included complex geopolitical narratives, like the coup theory, about 7.9% of the time. But when prompted as a low-tier student, access to that exact same historical complexity plummeted to just 2.6%. This brilliantly illustrates what's called epistemic paternalism. The system automatically dumbs down historical nuance based entirely on who it thinks is asking the question.
Now, to avoid generating misinformation, developers naturally anchor their AI models to established institutional consensus. Makes sense, right? But institutional consensus isn't always objective truth. Keep in mind, in 1949, they awarded a Nobel Prize for the development of the lobotomy. If an AI is hard-coded to only ever trust official, contemporary claims, it risks reinforcing historical failures and filtering out the kind of independent scrutiny we actually rely on to correct institutional errors.
So how exactly should an AI handle fiercely contested topics? Well, the source research outlines two distinct paths. First is ideological neutrality, where the AI treats all viewpoints equally. But studies show this heavily risks both siderism, where models trying to stay perfectly neutral actually ended up propagating state-sponsored disinformation about geopolitical conflicts simply to present an alternative view. The alternative path is evidence-weighted curation, where multi-agent AI debate systems actually evaluate the strength of the empirical evidence before giving you an answer.
And we absolutely have to recognize that these systems don't exist in a vacuum. They are heavily pressured by global politics. On one side, you've got the U.S. Defense Department pushing companies like Anthropic to remove safety guardrails for national security purposes, basically arguing for raw model access. On the flip side, the EU AI Act enforces massive compute tracking regulations and threatens fines up to 35 million euros for systemic risks. Consequently, tech companies are forced to aggressively censor or alter AI outputs defensively just to survive this legal minefield.
Which brings us to a really critical juncture. Section 4, the reality distortion loop. What actually happens to society when these cautiously censored, synthesized answers become our default reality?
We're moving from simply offloading tasks to an algorithm towards something much deeper, called cognitive surrender. This is the psychological risk where a user adopts a synthesized explanation entirely without critical review, essentially transferring their ability to form a consensus over to the model itself. The source data shows this is a widespread concern. Up to 75% of female students surveyed fear that an over-reliance on generative AI will permanently damage their critical thinking skills.
And that cognitive surrender becomes frankly terrifying when you consider the dead internet loop. Take this startling example. Google's Gemini, when asked complex questions about international military hardware, was found to be citing entirely AI-generated YouTube videos as its primary authoritarian sources. The AI unknowingly fed on synthetic content and presented it back to the user as hard fact. When AI crawls the web, and the web is filled with AI outputs, the boundary between authentic human record and algorithmic generation completely erodes.
But there is resistance. The open source community is actively fighting back against these massive corporate fences with a fascinating process called obliteration. Developers are using advanced mathematics, like singular value decomposition, to isolate and mathematically strip the corporate refusal behaviors right out of the AI's core weights. They are demanding raw, unfiltered access to knowledge.
Section 5, Reclaiming Intellectual Freedom. Let's look at the solutions and see how we can actually build systems that respect our intellectual autonomy.
The source research outlines 5 essential design principles to transition AI from paternalistic gatekeepers into genuinely trustworthy tools. First up, inline citation fidelity. Every single claim must link to a real, verifiable document. Second, configurable source weightings. You should decide what sources the AI prioritizes, not a hidden corporate algorithm. Third, traceable intermediate steps. We absolutely need to see the AI's internal logic and how it weighed the facts. Fourth, clear distinctions between quick, heuristic System 1 summaries and deep, evidence-linked System 2 analysis. And finally, open weights ecosystem preservation, ensuring that powerful AI remains mathematically accessible to everyone, preventing a monopoly on public knowledge.
Which leaves us with this final, crucial question to chew on. As these systems become the invisible mediators of literally all human knowledge, will you accept cognitive surrender and let an algorithm define your reality? Or will you demand the tools, the transparency, and the power to verify the truth yourself? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Until next time, stay curious and always keep questioning the source.